Hello students, now we are going to start the first unit from the paper number 9th of the BSc second year semester 4, and the title of the paper is the Real Analysis Second, and the title of the first unit is the Riemann integral. So let us begin with the Riemann integral. But before actual going to the Riemann integral, let us see what the Riemann integration means, and we'll begin with its introduction. So if you remember, so the concept of integration you have introduced at the time of 11th and 12th standard. In the 11th and 12th standard, you have introduced with the integration, and the integration at that time was defined as the process which is the inverse process of the differentiation. So integration is nothing but it is considered as the inverse process of differentiation. What does it mean? It means that if we have a function gx such that the d by dx of means if the d by dx means the derivative of function gx, if it is equal to f of x, then we can say that, then this means that the integration of fx dx is equal to gx. In this way, we have defined the integration in the 11th and 12th standard. So after that, here obviously x is a variable, and after that we have seen this is the formula for all x which belongs to the domain of the function. Next, after that, you have also, if we have gone through the introduction of the integration in the historical concepts, then the integration was introduced for computing the area bounded by the curves in the plane regions. Okay, in the plane regions, if we have to evaluate the area, then the introduction, more precisely the definite integration was used. Then, but afterwards, that relation with the geometrical concepts was overcome by a German mathematician Riemann. A German mathematician Riemann introduced a totally new integration theory which was independent of the geometrical concepts, and he gave a totally arithmetic treatment to the integration theory and formulated a new integration theory. So the name was given after him as the Riemann integral. So this Riemann was a German mathematician. Riemann was a German mathematician. He have given a totally new treatment to the integration theory and developed a new theory called the Riemann integral. Later on, many mathematicians contribute to this Riemann integral theory. Some of them mainly are the Lebesgue and others. But in our syllabus, we are going to study only the Riemann integral, and the Lebesgue integral and other things you are going to study in the PG level, that is in the MSc Mathematics. So let us begin with the actual syllabus of the Riemann integral. So the Riemann integral, its actual syllabus is, so we'll begin with the first article of this unit, which is about the definition and existence of the integral. But before going to that, throughout this paper, we are going to consider the intervals, mainly closed intervals. Okay, so closed interval. Especially in this first and second unit, we are going to consider a function f which satisfies two important conditions. Two important assumptions we are going to consider in the first two units, that is in the Riemann integral. The first condition is that the function f which is to be integrated, obviously it is called as integrand. Okay, so integrand is bounded. Bounded in the sense, we can say, instead of bounded we can say that it is a finite. Okay, integrand is finite in the given interval, in the given domain. Okay, so integrand is finite in the given domain, and the second condition is that domain of function f. Domain of function f is the closed interval. And that closed interval is closed interval from a to b. And obviously when we say closed interval a to b, which means that this is a finite interval. Okay, finite interval. By the finite interval we mean that a and b, both these are real numbers. They are real number means none of them can be infinity, means a and b both are the finite numbers. So these are the two very important conditions that are satisfied by the integrand as well as the domain of the function f in these first two units. Both first two units are on the Riemann integral. So in the Riemann integral we consider two very important conditions. Those are, number first, the integrand is finite in the given domain, and number second is that the domain of function f is the closed finite interval a to b, which means that a and b both are the real numbers. Okay, so these are the two very important conditions that are always we have to consider as they are in the Riemann integration. Okay, so the first article from this one is the article number 1.1. Article number 1.1, in which we are going to consider the definition and existence of the integral. Definition, definition definition and existence of the integral This is the first article of this first unit, definition and existence of the integral. So as told just now, throughout this we have to remember in the first units that the interval a to b is some finite interval, which means that a and b both are the finite real numbers, and this is a finite closed interval. Okay, so first of all we'll define partition. These are very important definitions. These definitions we are going to use throughout this paper, partition and so on. Okay, so partition. So before defining the partition, let us see what is meant by the interval first of all. Okay, partition. What is meant by the interval? You might have been know. We have already studied in the first year as well as you have studied in the 11th and 12th standard mathematics also the definition of the closed interval. By the closed interval a to b, we mean It is the set of all real numbers x. It is the set of all real numbers x such that A is less than equal to x is less than equal to b. This is the definition of the closed interval a to b, which means that if we take the set of all real numbers which lies between a and b, including both endpoints a and b, then it is called as the closed interval a to b. I will show this by means of the number line. Okay, so see here, if we consider the number line, this is our suppose our number line. If this is the number line, somewhere here it is a and here it is b. Whenever we say that closed interval a to b, it is to be always remember that a is less than b. The left end point is always less than the right end point. It is to be kept in mind forever. Okay, left end point is always less than the right end point. So closed interval a to b means it is the set of all the real numbers which begin with a and goes up to the b. Okay, all the real numbers which lies between a and b, including both endpoints a and b. This is the closed interval a to b. So x can take any value starting from a up to the b, then it is the closed interval a to b. Likewise, we have defined the closed interval in the 11th standard and it was revised in the first year also. So we will consider some examples of this closed interval a to b. See here, if we consider, if we have the closed interval 2 to 3, okay, by the closed interval, for example, we will consider 2 to 5. By the closed interval 2 to 5, we mean all real numbers x such that 2 is less than equal to x is less than equal to 5. Okay, which means that the smallest member of this closed interval 2 to 5 is obviously 2. Then the next member is, we cannot say next member exactly, but it is of the type 2.000000000 many times 0, 1 and so on, like such. All these real numbers are in this closed interval 2 to 5 and the last but one number will be of the form, this is not exact but it will be of the form 4.999999 and so on, and the last member of this set is the obviously 5. So this such a set is called as the closed interval 2 to 5. Okay, so closed interval 2 to 5 is in such a manner. So closed interval 2 to 5 we have seen. Next, but our main target was to see about the definition of the partition. Okay, so we'll go for the definition of the partition. So partition, its a definition is, what is its a definition? See, definition of the partition is, so let us consider the closed interval a to b as an interval. Okay, if we have closed interval a to b as a domain, then by the partition of the closed interval a to b, by the partition of closed interval a to b, we mean a finite set p. Is finite set p. P is a finite set, it has a finite number of points. Finite set p of points, which points? Having points x0, x1, x2, x3 and so on up to the xn. Okay, such that how many these points are in number? Obviously these are n plus 1 points in number, such that they satisfy the condition. Which condition? They satisfy the condition. This condition is important. The condition is that a is equal to x0. Means the first point in this set, which is x0, it must be equal to the left end point of the interval, that is, must be equal to a. Then this x0 must be less than equal to the second point in the set P, that is x1. x1 must be less than equal to x2. x2 must be less than equal to x3 and continued in this manner, and obviously this is less than equal to xn minus 1 and x minus 1, which is the last but one member of the set, this one P set, which is somewhere here, it must be again less than equal to xn, and xn is nothing but it is equal to b. Okay, so satisfying this means such that. So like such we have defined the partition of the closed interval a to b. Let us see once again. If we have the closed interval a to b, then by the partition of the closed interval a to b, we mean a set P of finite number of points x0, x1, x2, x3 and so on up to the xn, such that a is equal to x0, which is less than equal to x1, which is less than equal to x2, which is less than equal to x3, and continued is less than equal to xn minus 1, which is less than equal to xn, which is equal to b. Okay, this is the definition of the partition of the closed interval a to b. Then obviously you may have been noticed that this partition P of the closed interval a to b consists of n plus 1 points. Okay, it consists of n plus 1 points. This partition consists of n plus 1 points. N plus 1 points. Which was the first point of this partition? The first point was x0, which is equal to a, that is the left end point of the interval of which it is a partition, and the last end point, the last point of this partition is xn, which is obviously the n plus 1th point, and it is equal to b, which is the right end point of the interval of which this P is a partition. Okay, this we have noticed from the definition. Next, this partition P, which consists of the n plus 1 points, it subdivides the interval a to b into n subintervals. This partition P, which consists of the n plus 1 points, subdivides the interval a to b into n subintervals. Which are the subintervals? The first subinterval will be from x0 to x1. Okay, first subinterval will be from x0 to x1. That will be x0 to x1. The second subinterval will be from x1 to x2. Next subinterval will be from x2 to x3, and continued in this manner. Obviously the last means the nth subinterval will be from xn minus 1 to xn. In this way, the partition P subdivides the interval a to b into the n subintervals. These are n in number. Okay, we call these as subintervals of the interval a to b. So it is this. Next one. After this, now next one is the length of the interval, subinterval we are going to define. You may have been noticed that length of the interval a to b is obviously the right end point minus left end point, means b minus a. The length of the interval a to b is b minus a. Similarly, lengths of these subintervals x0 to x1, x1 to x2 and so on will be, they will be the length of the first subinterval, that is x0 to x1, is x1 minus x0. Length of the second subinterval, that is x1 to x2, will be x2 minus x1, and so on. The length of the last subinterval, that is the xn minus 1 to xn, will be obviously xn minus xn minus 1. Okay, in this way we have the lengths of the subinterval. So the length of the first subinterval, that is x0 to x1, is x1 minus x0. That will denote by the notation delta x1. Okay, delta x1 means the length of the first subinterval. One denotes the first length of the first subinterval. So delta x1 means the length of the first subinterval, which will be the right end point of the first interval, which is x1, minus the left end point of the first subinterval, which is x0. Then length of the second subinterval, this is nothing but what is this? This is the length of first subinterval. Length of first subinterval. Okay, first subinterval. Then we have the delta x2. Delta x2, by the delta x2 will denote the length of the second subinterval, which is the right end point of the second subinterval x2 minus left end point of the second subinterval x1. So x2 minus x1, this difference is called the length of the second subinterval. So this is length of, okay, this is length of second subinterval. Similarly, continuing in this manner, length of the nth subinterval will be denoted by delta xn, and which will be definitely xn minus xn minus 1. This is the length of the nth subinterval. Nth means here the last subinterval. So instead of writing delta x1 equal delta x2 delta xn and so on, in general, now we will call this, denote this, in general the ith subinterval we will going to consider here. Okay, so the ith subinterval. So if I is any number lying between 1 and n, then the length of the ith subinterval we will denote by the notation delta xi, and it will be obviously then will be equal to the xi minus xi minus 1, and this is the length of ith subinterval. Okay, so length of the ith subinterval will be denoted by the delta xi. These notations which you have seen just now, delta x1, delta x2 up to the delta xi, delta xn, and in general delta xi, these are nothing but these notations are for the length of the subintervals. Okay, all these notations, and the same notations delta x1, delta x2 will use to denote the corresponding intervals. Means the first subinterval, which is the delta x1, the first subinterval is from x0 to x1, will be also denoted by the same notation delta x1. So delta x1 means it is the length of the first subinterval, as well as it is also used to denote the first subinterval, which is x0 to x1. Okay, so when delta x1 is used to denote interval, then it is delta x1 is equal to the first subinterval x0 to x1, and when it is used to denote the length of the interval, then it is the length of the first subinterval, that is it is equal to the x1 minus x0. Similarly, the second subinterval, which is from x1 to x2, will be denoted by the notation delta x2. So delta x2, when it is this notation used to denote the interval, then it is x1 to x2 closed interval, and when it is used to denote the length of the interval, then it denotes the length of the interval, then it denotes the x2 minus x1. Okay, this number x2 minus x1 is denoted by delta x2 if it is used to denote the length of the interval. So it is this. Similarly, delta xn means the nth subinterval is delta xn, and delta xn, which is the last subinterval, it is nothing but if it is used to denote the interval, then it is closed interval xn minus 1 to xn. This is the nth subinterval, and in general delta xi is nothing but it is the ith subinterval, which is xi minus 1 to xi. Okay, xi minus 1 to xi, this is the ith subinterval. So keep in mind that we are going to use this notation delta xi as well as delta x1, delta x2 up to delta xn with two different meanings. Okay, which are the two different meanings? It is used to denote the length of the interval. Okay, it is used to denote the length of the interval, as well as it is used to denote the, it is also used to denote the corresponding interval also, as can be seen from here. Delta xi denotes the length of the ith subinterval, where I varies from 1 to n. Length of the ith subinterval, which is nothing but xi minus 1 to xi. This is denoted by the notation delta xi, as well as delta xi is also used to denote the ith subinterval, which is obviously the closed interval xi minus 1 to xi. Okay, the same notation we are going to use to denote the two different things, and will not get confused, because whenever it is used to denote the length, then it is the length of the ith subinterval, and whenever it is used to denote the interval, then it is the ith subinterval. Okay, so this is about the length of the subinterval as well as the subinterval. So this is about the introduction as well as the definition of the partition. We'll stop in this class here and we'll continue with some more definitions about the upper integral and lower integral in the next class. Thank you.